What's up, YouTube? Coach Guns bringing you EA College Football 2024 preview and predictions. So, basically what this is my compilation of what I think is going to be in the game, what's not going to be in the game, based on what was in NCAA 14 and what's in the current Madden. So, starting out, do I think the game will be on time? I do. I think the game will be released on time. I don't think there will be any more delays. I think it will come out July 2024, and we'll all be happy when it does come out. Now, do I think the game will be any good when it comes out? I think it's going to have its issues, and I think it's fair to expect it to have its fair share of issues. It's going to have its bugs. I have yet to find a game that doesn't release with bugs. I've played the new Call of Duties, the new Battlefields, you name it. I've played any sorts of games that's came out brand new release, from AAA titles to AA titles to companies with or without money. Every game releases with bugs. So we should not expect any different for this college football game. To keep that in mind. Now, gameplay and graphics. I think the gameplay will be similar to Madden, but it'll be unique in itself. What I mean by that, I think when we play the new EA college football game, there'll be times when we're like, hey, that kind of reminds me of Madden. That kind of like tackling animation. I'm sure a lot of the animations in Madden will be transitioned over to the EA college football game. I don't think they're going to do their whole new animations. That wouldn't make sense. If I'm the developer, I'm going to use every animation I have for the Madden and just import it over to the college football game. That, in my opinion, makes sense. And then adding some more animations to that. But in essence, when I feel like we play the new EA college football game come July 2024, I feel like when we pick up that controller, we'll be like, hey, this is different. This isn't the same as Madden. It may have similarities to Madden, but I think the gameplay will be unique in itself. Now, it's hard for me to describe and come up with details when it comes to the gameplay, because obviously we haven't seen any gameplay. Hell, we haven't even seen any screenshots or photos outside of the little mascot render we saw. So, you know, it's difficult to come up with detailed explanation on how it'll be different, but I believe it will be. And I think when we pick up that game, there will be similarities to Madden, but it'll be its own. Whether that be the speed of the gameplay or certain things slow down, I think it'll be somewhat similar. Now, when it comes to graphics, I believe I don't think they'll be as good as Madden 24 graphics. I don't. Now, you ask me why. The reason why I don't think they'll be as good as Madden is because, for one, in the NFL, there's 32 teams with 53 players on each roster. College football, there's going to be 100. There should be over 130 teams with 85 man rosters. So the amount of memory and data, not to mention, there's 130 different stadiums in essence, not including the bowl games. Probably including the bowl games, you're looking at 140, 150 different stadiums. Not to mention the different uniforms, and I just feel like there's a large memory component that's a factor into it as to why the graphics may not be the same as a Madden 23 or 24. Do I think the graphics will be amazing? Yes. I think when we see the first graphics for EA College Football, I think we're all going to be blown away. I think we're all going to just totally lose it. Because I'll tell you this, when I saw those first images of, it was the Ohio State mascot, the little renders of him, the little work in progresses of developing the mascot, I was just off of that, I almost lost it. So the graphics are going to be amazing. They may not be as good as Madden's, but they'll be maybe a notch down, but they'll still be amazing. I mean, I don't think we'll have anything to worry about in that aspect. So, when it comes to gameplay, when it comes to the release date, I think none of that is going to disappoint. I think it'll come out on time. I think the gameplay, a lot of people, because I'm on a lot of forums and a lot of different boards, and a lot of people just lose their mind. I'm not going to buy the game if it's like Madden. Blah, 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 blah. Like, I get that's your opinion and you're entitled to your own opinion, but I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. Me, I'm not a fan of Madden at all. Okay? I'm not a fan of the NFL, not a fan of Madden, but their gameplay isn't terrible. I think their online gameplay is what's terrible. Not their necessarily the player versus CPU gameplay. And not the CPU versus CPU gameplay, in my opinion, is beautiful. And yes, it could be tweaked, and the gameplay could be tweaked, but it's not as bad as what everyone says it is. And mind you, I'll be the biggest critique of Madden there is, or the biggest critique at EA. Like, I'm not one to fluff them up or kiss their ass. That's definitely not me, and I'll say how it is. However, I think we should be rational about this new college football game that's coming out and not be overzealous. I can guarantee you there will be a portion of the community that's just livid and pissed off about this new EA college football game, regardless of how well EA does. And the reason why I say that is because, first off, NCAA 14 has so much nostalgia. It's nostalgic. It has a lot of nostalgia behind it, and there's a lot of love and compassion behind that game. So I don't see how it's going to ever live up to how high of a pedestal they put NCAA 14 on. I think no matter what they roll out there's going to be a certain portion of the community that's going to be disappointed in what is put out on the field. But with that being said, I'm excited for it. I'm counting down the days. I'm counting down the days for the 2023 college football season. I'm ready to go. I love football. I love college football. And I'm super excited for the game. And let's now talking about the beloved Dynasty mode. So, Dynasty mode, I don't believe it's going to have Team Builder. And for custom conferences, I really don't know. Custom conferences back in NCAA 14. Basically, you can move any team to any conference as long as the numbers matched up and the numbers were even. But you could essentially create whatever conference you want. You could create super conferences. You could revert conferences back to previously old ones like the Southwest Conference or the old SEC from the early 80s or 90s. And that was the extent of custom conferences. Bowl tie-ins. I don't know how that's going to work with the college football playoff, the expanded college football playoff. Rules and dynasty settings, I could see those mirroring Madden. But, like I said, I really don't think we'll get Team Builder, me being quite honest. Obviously, in dynasty mode, you could pick any team you want. You could pick any offense or defensive coordinator you want. You could do custom schedules, which I hope make a return to EA College Football, as they should. You could basically, I wish you could have tweaked conference schedule as well. That was always locked in NCAA 14, but at the very minimum, you were allowed to tweak out of conference games when your bye week was. Those things could be tweaked, and also all those things should be in the new game. Should. When I say should, that means I expect them to be in the new game. Doesn't mean EA says they're going to be in the game. Redshirting players, I think that'll be in the game too, because that's also part of college football. Now, I don't know how that rule is going to work, because as of right now, you're allowed to play 4 games, I think it is, before burning your red shirt. So I think that may become a little complicated, but I mean, with the newer advanced consoles and PCs, that shouldn't be an issue. That should be something that can be easily implemented, and it's honestly part of college football, so there's no reason why it shouldn't be in the game. Now, when it comes to like the preseason in college football, or the week to week. I think like in the Madden games, they need to add the Madden little scenario generator where you have these little week to week scenarios based on what happened the previous week. I honestly love this part of Madden, the little scenario engine, and I really, really, really hope that if not in the first game of EA College Football, by the second game it's added, because I really, really enjoy that little scenario engine. It helps with breakout players, it helps with disgruntled players. It just makes the game feel organic, alive, and immersive. It makes your players feel like, you know, they're actually talking to you. I mean, some of them are kind of generic, but even then, the scenario engine has gotten better and better with each Madden. And I haven't tried it out with Madden 24 yet. I'll be running a franchise with it, but I'm very curious to see how far that Madden scenario engine has come throughout all these years. I just think it's something that would bode college football really well for it to be in the game. Like I said, it makes the game really immersive when you feel like you're having these conversations with your players, these little game day goals or messages from your players having these conversations with you, whether it be their frustrations or them telling you like, hey, the backup outside linebacker, you know, he's been working really hard. I think, you know, we should get him some game rep or whatever. All these things could bode very well for franchise mode, for Dynasty mode, I'm sorry. And very good ideas from Madden. Another thing Madden did was the weekly strategy. So in Madden, there's a weekly strategy where you could, you know, basically set up your offensive and defensive game plan against the opposing team. It basically gives you some stats and information on the opposing team, and it says, you know, what they like to run or whatever. And there's a couple other things you're allowed to, you know, mess with, like your practice habits, what the game plan is. And I think all of those would be really, really cool if refined a little bit. In Madden, I think, at least in 23 and 22, it wasn't exactly refined. Like, they had progressive fatigue in Madden, and it didn't really work, because the reason why I say that is because it worked for the user if it was managed properly, but the AI couldn't manage their own team's fatigue properly. So by the end of the season, you'd have teams where their starters were barely playing because of how tired they were. And that's obviously not something you want to run in when it comes to the college football playoff. You don't want all your starters fatigued out on the opposing team and be able to just run through them because they're playing backups the whole time. So that's something they need to fix, but I think the weekly strategy idea and then concept would be really good for the new EA college football game. And potentially, hopefully it's in the game. I mean, all these ideas are in Madden currently, and they're up and running in some current form. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to transition these smaller modes into the game. And like the groundwork is already there for it. So hopefully that's something that'll be in the next college football game. Talking about fatigue and injuries, Madden does horrible with injuries. Your starting quarterbacks hardly ever get hurt. Quarterbacks in general hardly get hurt. In NCAA 14, there were hardly any injuries in that game either. Injuries are definitely something that they need to work on, especially with the 85-man rosters. There's so much more room for injuries, and it's not like you have those premier quarterbacks anymore like they do in Madden, like your Tom Brady's, your Aaron Rodgers, your Drew Brees, that they don't want injured. In college football, anything and everything should go, so injuries should definitely be part of the game and fixed, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to all the UI elements of NCAA 14, there are a lot in the game, and there should be more added, in my opinion. Like in NCAA 14, there was the whole Dynasty stories where it gave week to week. They have scores and schedules where you could, unlike in Madden, play any game on schedule for that week. I really find it strange that in Madden you can't, but they also gave you a game preview where Lee Corso would tell you his prediction. They'd give you a little run-up of all the teams that were playing that week. And it was really cool because if I wasn't playing that week or whatever, or I wanted to see who was playing the championship game that week, I could basically get a quick little rundown of the two teams. And it was really cool how you could play or even watch any of the games. And that's something you can't do in Madden, which I find very strange. The polls and all that, they'll be obviously in the game. What's a college football game without top 25 polls and coaches polls and CFP polls, conference standings? Those all things are in Madden. They should be in the game. One of the things that was in the NCAA game that wasn't in Madden is they have preseason polls as well, where they'll tell you like their predictions, like this is the projected conference standing lineup, right? And those are really cool and unique things that NCAA 14 had that I hope are, implemented in the new EA college football game. I am really excited to see the new revamped EA college football Dynasty mode. And they got Heisman. So I did not like how NCAA 14 did Heisman at all. Back in, I think it was NCAA 06, they had like a whole little video of the Heisman ceremony and everyone who was up for the Heisman. I'm going to put it in the video. It was just super cool. So this is going back to NCAA 06. You had it basically gave a little presentation of everyone who was up for the Heisman Trophy, who was up for the running of the Heisman Trophy, and then it gave a little presentation of whoever won it, and I just thought that was so cool. And that's definitely something I would love to be in the new college football game. They definitely, in my opinion, need to go back to that whole Heisman Trophy presentation, which I thought was really good for the game, and just really cool in general, in my opinion. And they also had all these like little sub-menus, which like had championship contenders, which basically a bunch of UI elements that gave out projections and information. I loved those menus. I don't know about all of you who played NCAA 14, but I'd go through those menus all the time, and just to see what my projection was looking like, what other teams' projection was like. I love seeing all the like who was up for the awards, who won the awards. It was just so cool. I like players of the week, being able to go back weeks on weeks to see each conference's player of the week. Like the UI elements in NCAA 14, in my opinion, unmatched in any EA title. Madden definitely does not have anything close to the UI elements that NCAA had, and them being able to track just all this information and keep it within seasons and seasons and seasons, bowl projections, just all this. I mean, they had a little bit with the little college football, the NFL playoff projected bracket or whatever, but like this game is 10 years old and it had all this stuff. So I find it hard to believe that Madden still doesn't have all this stuff. But with that being said, hopefully, as a college football fan, I really don't care what Madden has, as long as NCAA or EA college football is done well for me. That's all ultimately that matters. Now, Madden has come out with some really cool ideas, like things we've been over with already, and things that I hope they implement into the game, but mind you, NCAA is 10 years old. 10 years old. And it still holds up beautifully. Shout out to the college football revamped guys who just outstanding job in what they did. Which is all the overlays and the graphics. They just did an outstanding job redoing all the uniforms. Not to mention, NCAA 14 also had an array of records. So basically, you go back to see your team's records through passing, rushing, and what milestone you need to do to break them. There was just so much information in NCAA 14, and I just loved it. Now, obviously, college football revamped add the players' names. Before it was generic, like QB11 with this whatever. But man, I'm telling you, like there's just so much information. Even if it was just QB11 with the record, passing yard record, I could still see what the record was and what my player needed to do to beat the record if I really cared about it, or if he was approaching the record. like I just said, just so many like elements that just made it so unique and just immersive. And my favorite word, organic. It made it feel organic and just natural. Now, the off-season of NCAA 14, I hope they add a little bit more to it. We went over the coaches. We'll go over the coaches, but when it comes to the going pro and the draft and all that, it was broken. NCAA 14 was broken. You'd have players like C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, these top-level quarterbacks, and mind you, it was like that for any position, but they'd be like underclassmen, these juniors, and they just wouldn't declare. So you could have like a 95 overall quarterback that just wouldn't declare, like C.J. Stroud for this Ohio State team. He's a 95, 96 overall quarterback, and he just wouldn't declare, which, in my opinion, like destroyed the immersion of the game. Obviously, if you got surefire first-round picks, they're going to declare, and I'd probably say maybe 5% of the time they return. In today's college football, they declare. Like I said, 95 or more percent of the time. So that's something that obviously I'm sure will be fixed come EA's college football game. So I'm not really too worried about that, but I'm sure that's something that'll get addressed for the next game, because you don't want an immersive breaking game. Now when it comes to position changes, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of like the off-season portion. If you have recruits like athletes, that's when you switch them over. Or if you have like, I don't know, like a slow corner that's really good at coverage, you might want to switch him to safety or whatever. That's when you just move around a couple of the positions. I'm sure it'll be, I personally don't think we'll have necessarily a position change phase in the next EA college football game, because even me, I thought it was kind of a waste. I think there should just be like a roster management phase, and that's where you switch the positions or whatever. But I think it's more on you to switch the positions. But, you know, who knows? Maybe they will have a position change mode. I rarely used it. It was just more to like fill, like if I had too many left ends or not enough free safeties and I had too many strong safeties, I would just even them out, because at the end of the day, it really didn't matter that much. Now when it came to training results, it was always, your players were always getting better. Now what the college football revamp team and the mod community came up with was the ability for your guys to regress, and that's something that I hope they add to the new EA college football game. Is you're not always will your players get better. Some players will have a lazy off season, they'll have just a messed up off season, and they'll just regress, whether that be due to injury too. If a player hasn't practiced in a year and he's coming off an ACL tear, obviously his speed and agility should not be going up, right? Now when it comes to cutting players, when you cut a player in NCAA 14, they just disappear. In my opinion, in the new game, if you are cutting a player, that player should be automatically inputted to the transfer portal. Just like in Madden, how if you cut a player, he automatically goes to free agency. So that should be an easy transition for them to make. Nothing too crazy. Not nothing wild, out of the ordinary. Pretty self-explanatory. And like I said, I don't think it'll be that far off, you know? We should be good when it comes to that. But like I said, with Dynasty mode, mainly everything is already intact with NCAA 14. Obviously, they're having to create a whole new game. So, you know, as long as these developers just take a look at what NCAA 14's Dynasty mode was, I think they'll be okay. Like, if I'm going into building the Dynasty mode for EA College Football game, I'm taking everything there was in NCAA 14, bringing it over to EA College Football, and I'm going to improve it. But I'm not going to take away features. So, hopefully they do that. I mean, there was just so much UI and immersive menus into the game. They got a lot to live up to, I'll tell you that. Now, recruiting, one of the most important aspects of college football NCAA 14 and hopefully the new EA college football game. Going back to NCAA 14, there was the option of creating a prospect, auto-generating prospects, and Madden, there's the option to create your own draft class, and I believe there will also be a feature in the new EA college football game to create your own recruiting class. Going to there was a feature called the Spark 100 that basically showed you in NCAA 14 who your top athletes were, just athletes, nothing else. There was a pipeline state feature which basically showed your recruiting footprint. If I'm Florida, where am I pulling prospects out of? And the more prospects I pulled out of certain states, the more influence I had to gain more prospects out of those states. They were called pipeline states. There was abilities to add pipeline states and lose pipeline states. And recruiting, there was also grades for your schools. Now these grades can be changed, not manually, but certain grades like television exposure, the more big games you played in, the grade would go up. The more championships you would win, championship prestige would obviously go up. And obviously a lot of these things would change based on your on-the-field success. Stuff like playing time was just based on recruit to recruit, whether it be a 5-star number 1 wide receiver or a 2-star wide receiver, and where they fit on your team was based on what their projected playing time would be. And then there was a lot of UI roster management features that basically, this screen, showed me what my team needs. Do I need linebackers, safeties, whatever, in the recruiting sphere to help me build my team. All these things, extremely important that they get added to the new EA college football game. Now, when it came to the overall recruit composition in the game, it was okay in NCAA 14. In my opinion, there were too many Caucasians and European type players in positions that they're not traditionally in. So in the running back position, a lot of Caucasian and European type of players, when in essence, in reality, 95% of those guys are all African American. So that kind of stuff, in my opinion, just breaks the immersion a little bit. And then there was another issue where the players' names wouldn't match up with their ethnicity. You'd have some super Caucasian name but attached to an African American player, which I get it, sometimes does happen, but it was too common. So I hope they fix all those kind of issues. I hope there's more unique players when it comes to the recruiting makeups. I did like how when you selected a player, you could see who was recruiting them, where they were in his recruitment. I didn't like the whole scouting system, how it was in NCAA 14, and ultimately I don't like the scouting system in Madden either. However, I do think they could serve each other well if they combined. I liked how they showed the player's pitch info and what the player was interested in. However, I do feel like in previous NCAAs there was more in-depth recruiting you had to do. You had to unlock all those things and actually recruit the player to find out what the biggest interests they had were. And I think those are elements they should add to the new EA college football game. What I didn't like about scouting in NCAA 14 was you could take these two players, for example, and once I scouted them, I basically could see I could see their overall in all their ratings. And I thought that was really, really cheesy. And I did not enjoy the NCAA 14 scouting system at all. And that was one of the things about the game that I really thought was a disservice based on where scouting was in previous games. But, I've played around with not scouting at all in the game, and that brings up a whole other form of issues when it comes to getting gems and busts, and it was unpredictable when I did a couple playthroughs without scouting. I will say that, and there's an element of recruiting that is unpredictable when it comes to the players you bring in. However, I did miss the element of, the whole team management and finding the right players and finding those gems and finding those busts and making sure I wasn't bringing in those guys. What it ultimately came down to when I wasn't scouting was, I'm just bringing in as many 5 stars and 4 stars as possible, because that would give me the best overall chance of bringing in the best players. And I get it's kind of like that in reality too, but I think, and hopefully in the next EA college football game, like they've done in Madden, they've kind of fleshed out scouting. So in Madden, they added regional scouts, which was cool in my opinion. I just didn't like how there wasn't much control of when these. I didn't like how there wasn't much control of which player was scouted. It was kind of like one of those things, and I think this system fit specifically to Madden, and I don't think it would fit for NCAA because I don't need every single quarterback in the state of California scouted. I just need a handful of these guys scouted that I'm interested in. But one of the things I did like about Madden, how they had these player nodes, they had these projected archetypes, they had all these statistical information for each for each draft prospect, and I really enjoyed that. And that's something I hope they bring over to the new EA college football game. There's all these little stats and all these little tidbits of information that I could overall build an idea of who and what is coming into my program and who I could be possibly scouting or recruiting, so I generally know like who and what this guy is. I think it's extremely important to, but you know, it's also optional. I don't have to go in depth if I don't want to, and I don't really care about all this stuff. It's not one of those things where if I don't do it, you know, it could break my recruiting class. Like I could have the CPU or computer do all this for me, and yeah, my team will be a little bit more generic and it won't be necessarily mine, but for those players who don't really care, I believe something like this can both help a player like me who likes the realism, likes the organicness, likes the immersion, and then someone who really doesn't care about it, you know? So I believe adding features like this can help both of us. I really love those player notes, and then the whole physical, like for EA college football game, you could have like Under Armour combine where these grades were taken from, or you know, just whatever combine, whatever little thing they went to, these players. And then there was the whole to unlock even more, you could have a private workout with these players. And a lot of these players that come to visits with these schools, they'll do their own little private workout for the coaches, and you know, they'll have these like Friday Night Lights kind of deals. I know Florida is called like Friday Night Lights. And then they'll just have the players work out, and they'll do like almost like a little combine for the players to, you know, do a little bit more scouting. And I think those are all little cool, unique things that could be added to the EA college football game. Do I think they will be added? Probably not, because EA tends to be bare bones with its features. And if EA could possibly hold out with these features and keep the community at base for as long as possible, they will. Because they're like, hey, we could keep these features and add it to, you know, a later iteration of the game and claim it as a big box feature. Like, recruits scouting combine, or whatever you would call it. This is our new big box feature. Just like they did with scouts with one of the previous Maddens. Like that was the big box feature. And Madden's franchise has gotten better, but it's still not where it needs to be. So I'm very curious and intrigued on how they're going to do the EA College Football Dynasty. A lot of us, including myself, are a little scared about how bare bones they are with these kind of games, but if we're being honest, NCAA always had a better Dynasty mode over their franchise mode. It was always better. So that's one thing we have to hang our hat on and hopefully keep everything going. Now, when it came to recruiting in NCAA 14, as soon as a player committed to you, they were committed to you forever. There was zero, and absolutely zero chance that they would flip or whatever. You could essentially, as cheesy as it sounds, I could recruit the number 1, 2, and 3 quarterback, and as soon as I got all 3 of their commitments, none of them would decommit. As opposed to, like, in reality, none of those 3 players wouldn't sign with me. The number 1 ranked 2, and 3 ranked quarterbacks would not sign with me. I couldn't even get the 1 and the 2 ranked quarterbacks to sign with me. Maybe the number 1 ranked quarterback and a low mid 3-star quarterback, yeah, but I couldn't definitely get 2 top-rated quarterbacks. They wouldn't sign with me because they want to be that guy in their recruiting class. So I think that's something that needs to be, there needs to be the ability for commits to flip, the ability for commits to decommit, and there should always be some form of like, dang, I just got this guy to commit to me, but can I hold on to his commitment until signing day? And then holding on to his commitment after signing day and stopping him from entering the transfer portal is a whole nother issue. But there should always be constant, not too much, but there should be some amount of percentage of movement. I'm curious what the actual percentages are for top 300 players for committing and decommitting. Obviously, if a coach gets fired or moves on to a better school, then there's a reason for those players to decommit. Like, you know, there should be player tags to certain players that give them a higher probability to decommit. Like if we remember, who's the cornerback in this last recruiting class? He ended up committing to Colorado and Deion Sanders. He was like a 5-star corner. The dude like committed and decommitted just a bunch of times. I'm looking up his name right now. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But there should be guys who just flip-flop their recruitments and almost be like red flag guys. And ultimately, those guys have like some special tag where they end up, once they commit to you, there's a high probability of them entering the transfer portal later. So I think that would be really cool and a really unique feature to add too. Now when it comes to like the whole signing classes and all those kinds of things, you know, the thing is with college football, most of the recruits are not necessarily signed, but they're committed before National Signing Day, whether it be the early signing day or the one in February. Most of them are already committed. So there's very few big names that are committing on those days, especially the later signing day in February. But I'm sure, you know, according to all the reports, Dynasty mode and the recruiting is going to get a revamped in the EA college football game. So, you know, I'm excited to see what they have in store for us because I have a feeling we're going to be really surprised with what they come up with at EA Sports. Basically, when it comes to, you know, what we're expecting. I think there's a lot of things in the game that will be in the game and won't be in the game that we're expecting. Shout out to Matt Brown. He's done a lot of reporting on EA college football game, and according to what he says, EA Sports knows that Dynasty mode, recruiting, and all these features are the most important to our community. So hopefully they don't let us down, you know? Hopefully it's what we think it will be, or what it could be. Obviously, there's going to be a level of disappointment because we like to brainstorm about all these cool and unique features, but we got to have the bare minimum. And in my opinion, that's what NCAA 14 gave us. And just the ability to go into the team rankings, recruiting rankings, and click any team out of the 130 teams and see who they signed or who's committed to them. It's just so cool. I wish I could see pictures of them and stuff like that too, but you know, whatever. The fact that I could go through all freaking 2,000, 3,000 recruits and see where they committed is just so cool. And hopefully all those simple things. Now, talking about coaches in the new EA college football game, coaching carousel. We definitely need head coaches, offensive coordinators, and defensive coordinators minimally in the new EA college football game. It was probably one of the most amazing features about Dynasty mode was being able to start as a coordinator, working your way up the coaching carousel, being able to be fired, hired, being able to because if you don't meet your performances at your unique school, you become fired and you have to downgrade. All uniqueness that made the game feel organic and alive, which just increased the immersion. Each school had unique set of expectations. Each job had a unique set of expectations. If I'm at Alabama, I'm going to have different expectations than I would at Southern Miss, or if I'm at Vanderbilt. You could choose any of the schools available. You could start as a head coach. You could create your own coach. And no matter what school you were at, it was all unique. What the contract you were given, the uniqueness of the job expectations, all of it was unique, and it made the game feel alive. You need this in the new EA college football game. You don't gotta add to it. I mean, I would like for you to add to it, but give me the bare minimum. Another thing that they had was skill trees. Each position had its own skill tree. If you were a head coach, you had a section for game management. If you had a section for recruiting. As an offensive coordinator, you had an offensive section. Defensive coordinator, you had a defensive section. They added this feature in Madden. It was so cool. I wasn't a fan of how they set up the feature in both games. To me, it was very linear in both games, both Madden and NCAA, when I don't think it should be. I think it should be more of a pros and cons kind of deal. If I choose a skill upgrade, it should give me something, but it should take away something. If I just know what I would do in this game as a head coach is I would just max out my recruiting tree, right? Because in my opinion, the game management tree really didn't matter. Now, there should be a pro and con effect to that. By me just becoming a pure recruiter, there should be a negative impact on my team. If I'm an offensive style coach and I don't balance myself out and I neglect my defensive side of the ball, obviously I'll become like a Lincoln Riley or a Lane Kiffin kind of coach, where my offenses are always super talented and elite, but my defenses always struggle. Or if I'm a Will Muschamp, or all those high-level defensive coordinators that became head coaches, and their defenses were always elite, but their offenses struggled. There should always be, in my opinion, a give and a take. There should be a way to balance yourself out. There should be a way to max yourself out in a category, but you shouldn't always be able to have everything. There should always be a give and a take, a pros and a cons to it. Now, if they just give me the skill tree as it is in NCAA 14 and Madden, at least they're going to add it, and I won't be terribly upset with it. But in my opinion, that's how I think they should go about it, and how they should alter the tree moving forward. In Madden, you could be the head coach, offensive. You can't be the offensive or defensive coordinator, but those trees are available. And a player personnel tree, which the more you could add to the game and make it organic and unique, the better. I don't understand why Madden went that route where you can't be a coordinator. There's no coaching carousel, which I'll get into in a couple minutes. But all those things need to be into the new EA college football game. The whole coaching aspect of the game is what makes college football, and it's what makes Dynasty mode. Being able to grow your team, grow your career, and moving up in the college football ranks, and progressiveness and employment is what makes the game. Now, going back to NCAA 14, when you were a coach, there was times where you were given a contract extension, there were times you were fired, and there was times you could progress as a coach. If I'm the offensive coordinator at Ohio State and I'm doing well and I'm doing great things, there's going to be chances for me to promote. Or if I'm doing bad, they're going to fire me. Because like I said, each job has their unique set of expectations and a unique set of circumstances. If I'm at a premier job like LSU and I'm not doing well, I'm not managing the expectations both on the field and off the field, I'm going to lose my job. And eventually, if I lose my job, I'm going to have to take a lesser job. And it's what made the game feel organic and alive. It captured the essence of what college football is in the offseason. And that's extremely important for the next game when it comes to Dynasty mode, is being able to capture the essence of the coaching carousel, what makes college football unique in the offseason. Because if I get fired, move on to jobs, or anything that happens, it all affects recruiting, the transfer portal, or anything in that aspect. If I'm looking to, like, I'm a Gators fan, right? If I'm looking to get that job at the University of Florida, I could see it all playing out in front of me. This wasn't just a thing where I could only see what was happening to myself. I could see what was happening across college football, which made the game feel alive, like what was happening around me was alive and unique. And that's something that needs to be added to the new college football game. And if it's not, I'm going to be extremely, extremely disappointed. And a feature like this could make or break the game if it's not done properly. In my opinion, you just give me the bare bones of what was in NCAA 14, and that's already, we've made it. Now, in my opinion, does it need to be fleshed out? Does it need to be improved upon? It does. But I understand EA Sports. I've played their games for years. They could be a pain in the ass. If you look at, there's even a section in NCAA 14 where you can see all of the coaching hires and firers, all the retirements in one whole section. There was so much information given to the user about not what was only happening to your team, but what's happening around you in college football. It's something that needs to be added. Now, they even had a whole section. It was called Coach Central, where you could see, your skill tree as the head coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. There was XP goals where you could see how you continue to improve, what milestones you have to hit as a coach to improve your standings as prestige, and just ultimately in your skill tree, right? There was everything you could see. One of my favorites was under the coaching contracts, where you could see, if you're a head coach, how your athletic director sees you. If you're on the hot seat, your job security, he gives you a little snippet of what's happening. And this was so as a head coach, offensive and defensive coordinator. If you were a coordinator, it was your head coach giving you that snippet. I love that, and that's something that please needs to come back. Job security. You could see everyone's job security and how their university was portraying them. And in a sense, by seeing this, you could project what jobs were going to eventually come open in the offseason. If you see, Shane Beamer, who's slowly trickling down at South Carolina, he may not get fired this offseason, but if this continues for him, the South Carolina job's going to come open. And if I'm at a lesser job, seeing that, I could project what jobs are coming open and where I might have job opportunities at. And this was so as the head coach, offensive and defensive coordinator, and everything, I could see this. Definitely one of those things that needs to come back in some shape or form with the amount of detail in the new EA college football game. Such an amazing detail, in my opinion. So much user interface and user interaction where I could see what's happening, not only at my university, but around me, which is what made the game feel alive and unique and organic. If you look at Madden, it's just so bland. Even going to coaching philosophies. Our coaching staff could have different run or pass aggressions, different play style aggressions, different no huddle aggressions, and all this that made each coaching staff and team feel unique. Playing Madden, I played the Madden 24 beta. The playbooks were different, but each team felt the same. And in NCAA and college football, there's 130 plus teams that are all unique and different, and they should all feel unique and different when I play against them. As the team I run, my team should feel unique. It shouldn't all be cookie cutter. Madden is so cookie cutter when it comes to this. Every team should feel unique and organic. Going to the coaching info, there's a whole screen where you could just see every single coach in the country as a head coach, offensive, defensive coordinator, and see their information. Even going to the small detail as seeing their age. their age. I could see and project when a coach like Nick Saban's going to retire based on his age. Yeah, it was messed up in the game right now. But it was put like that so he wouldn't retire. Anyway, but going back to it, it needs to be unique and there needs to be information. One of the things I just totally loved was you could see the records of these coaches and teams. You could see the record of every head coach, his career record of where he's been at. And that is so cool. You could see his career record. You could see the team record. The record he is got to mention being at that unique team. You could just see all these unique fine details that just made the game feel so organic and immersive. Career record. Something that I feel like should get easily input their winning season. Winning season. Longest win streak they've had. Conference championships, national championships, bowl record, record versus the top 25, record versus rivals, average recruiting class rate, like top 25 so many details, Heisman Trophy, NCAA 14. There's just so many details that were added in NCAA 14 that made the game feel unique, organic, and immersive. So many details. And based on where technology is now, with the next-gen consoles, where it could possibly be if they add the game to PC, there's absolutely zero reason why these features shouldn't be in the game. They absolutely shouldn't. They should be in the game. And if they're not, it's just one of those things that's going to continue to show the community, like, hey, we're not where we were, even though we're next gen and we're all of this with the new EA college football game, we're still missing very important and unique features to NCAA 14. Features that, in my opinion, are extremely important to have because it makes the game feel organic. It makes the game feel unique. It makes the game feel immersive. It's what makes Dynasty mode is all these little features combining into one. Now, Madden does not have these features, and I don't understand why. I really don't. I don't understand how you could be a next-gen game like Madden is, and at this point, 10 years ahead of where NCAA 14 is, and still not have these features. To me, it's criminal. To me, it's just a failure on EA Sport. It's a failure on Madden. It's a failure on the NFL. Just a complete failure that these features are not in the game at this point. Now, regarding the college football playoff, as many of you know, in 2024 we will be getting the expanded college football playoff. Looking back at the recent Maddens, they have some form of playoff bracket, as you can see pictured above, where it lists all the teams, who they'll eventually end up playing, so on and so forth. I also believe that the new college football game will have a similar system to show the players who's going to be in the playoffs, what their eventual path is to reach the college football national championship game. Now, this will include, obviously, if you have first round buys, home field advantage, if you are automatic bid to a conference championship. There's multiple factors in play throughout the season of why you may be where you are in the college football playoffs. And I was really excited when they added that to Madden, because just something so simple as a playoff bracket for the player and the user to see can just be so, just add so much more to the game, and so much where you can just feel what's happening around the league and everywhere else, as opposed to it just being a small menu. And when it comes to, the presentation of the college football playoffs and the college football national championship, I believe that it will be a little bit more unique compared to a regular game. Now, I don't know how unique it'll be. I don't know. And obviously the current Maddens, you'll have like an NFL playoff game. And the NFL playoff game is not considerably different to what a regular game is. But hopefully in the future in Madden and in the new college football game, the playoff games, the conference championship games, and especially the national championship game will get a little bit more buzz, a little bit more uniqueness to the presentation and to the, obviously a lot of us shut off the commentary, but it'd be nice if, it was just a lot more, it felt more alive and organic. And obviously whoever wins the championships, there needs to show a presentation that you actually won something big. And in my opinion, it needs to be a different presentation from if you won a conference championship or a bowl game to, let's say, the national championship. Those presentations need to be a little bit different. And going back to NCAA 14, I thought their presentation was okay. However, it was too similar, in my opinion, to if you won a conference championship game or a bowl game. They were too similar, in my opinion. I think they need to be just a tad bit different. And so that's something Madden hasn't exactly got right either. If you look at the Madden Super Bowl presentation, they don't have any championship presentations for anything else, but it's been very similar over the past couple years. They've changed it a little bit in the past recent Maddens, but it hasn't been to the unique standards I think myself and the community really wants, so we're hoping with the new college football game they add some super uniqueness to it, and it makes it feel alive. It makes it feel like you actually won something extremely important. And it's hard to win a national championship. It's hard to win a Super Bowl. So they should show you that, your team actually won something important. Now, regarding players and rosters and equipment, I do believe in the new college football game you'll have something similar to the current Madden's player archetypes, player tags, player motivations, and ultimately player development. So in the current Madden, you have different archetypes. Let's just say, for example, like this safety. He has different ratings based on his role of run support, zone, playmaker, and all the positions have their own unique player archetypes. Wide receivers could be different ratings depending on how you use them as a deep threat, playmaker, slot, or if you want them more physical. And being in college football, how there's so many different offenses and unique defenses, a system like this would be perfect for it. Because there's so many unique offenses, defenses, you need unique players. You need the players to feel organic. You need them to feel unique and differentiate the players from each other. And I think Madden did an outstanding job with that. I feel like it could still be fleshed out a little bit more, but being that they even added something like that, I thought was incredible. Especially we have low expectations for EA and Madden, but I hope they add something similar to it. Scheme fits and just the overall uniqueness to the players that show if I have two quarterbacks, they're not just an overall rating to me. That based on their ratings, they fit in different categories, whether they be a field general, whether they have strong arms that can make really accurate and deep throws, they're improvisers. There's different ways you could flesh out all these positions to make them unique and organic. And that's ultimately what makes the game feel alive and immersive, is when you have all these different elements that make all these players different. And that's something I hope they added in the new EA college football game. It's something that they already have in place in Madden. So I can't see the transition being that difficult. Now regarding to player tags and stuff like that, those tags could affect how they choose a team in recruiting, how they choose when or not to enter the transfer portal, and who they choose while in the transfer portal. Well, you have a guy that wants a big NIL offer, a guy who wants to be close to home, a guy who wants to be on a championship team or a competing championship team. Those are all factors that could affect not only recruiting but the transfer portal, and that's a feature that's already in the current Madden, so I can't see it being too difficult to transition over to. All these things, like I said, continue to make the game organic and immersive. Now, when it comes to player equipment, I could see at least 90% of the equipment that is in the current Madden being transitioned over to the EA college football game. All the unique types of arm sleeve, cleats, knee pads, and all sorts, all the different variations of helmets and face masks. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to edit names and height and weights and all those kinds of things. And the reason why I say that is because of the whole litigation that the whole NCAA football and EA Sports had with the previous installments of the game. So I don't know if they'll allow that feature to be editable, but I know you'll be able to edit equipment and customize your player when it comes to equipment. Like I said, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 if they'll allow it, whether you'll be able to change names of players and height and weights. You'll maybe be able to do it in like Dynasty mode, but not be able to do it in just pure edit roster mode, so you can't share it, because at this current point you can't really save rosters from franchise or Dynasty mode. So I could see them doing something like that. But you know, it all just depends on how the whole NIL with all the players works out in the future, and ultimately how that all plays out. If we end up getting most of the actual players in the game or none of the players in the game due to all this weird litigation with Brandar. I know they've talked a lot about that with the whole litigation in EA Sports. But another thing that was really interesting to me about how they did the initial NCAA games was, like, going back to NCAA 14, the roster limit was only at 70. Now, we all know a full college football roster is at 85. So going back, you were short 15 actual roster spots in the game. And I think if they do the whole NIL route and getting players into the game, I do believe we'll get a full 85. I don't see how they determine what 15 players to get left out. So I do believe we'll eventually get the full 85 into the game, which I like, because I always thought roster management was a little weird in the NCAA games because we didn't get the full 85. Like, if you redshirt players, like, you become incredibly short at certain positions, so it was a little strange. But walk-ons, I'm sure will be a thing, and I'm sure we'll get all the basic features that we've already had when it comes to rosters and roster management in the new EA College Football game. And guys, that'll wrap it up. Like I said, I believe the game will arrive on time with all players with NIL deals, or at least most of them. I believe all 130 plus teams will be in the game. And I think we'll be extremely happy with the end result that we end up getting. That'll do it for my preview and predictions of EA College Football. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Coach Guns